Welcome to Ambedkar Periyar Study Circle. It's always a pleasure to discuss with Ambedkar Periyar Study Circle because this is my fourth or fifth lecture in your circle. It all started with lecture on Tamil genocide. Then we have discussed on NEET and NEET and imposition. Then lastly, we spoke about national education policy and its ill effects. Now we are meeting about not because of man-made an epidemic or a pandemic situation. A virus pandemic has created a toll in all aspects of our life. So we're going to discuss especially regarding Corona or COVID-19. See, you've been loaded with a lot of information with Corona, basics of Corona, what the virus infection, the epidemiology of this virus, the spreadability of this virus, and how we started, then how it's spread across continents. So today my topic will be on my personal experience with Corona virus over the past 2.5 months, where I'm a treating physician of one of the main hospitals in Chennai. So far, I've dealt around 160, 170 cases of Corona. I lost few patients, especially my known patients, very much. It takes a lot of emotional toll also on my aspect of my practice too. Why? Because just 3 days back, I had a phone call. I had a phone call for my professor's daughter, who's also an anesthetist. I just called up in early morning, so around say 1 o'clock early morning, saying that my professor is not good, feeling well. Then I asked what happened. Then he said my professor also was a retired HOD of medicine in Madras Medical College and director of medicine of Madras Medical College. He was into the therapeutic committee formed by the Tamil Nadu state government. So he attended a few meetings in Government General Hospital, and he happened to see few patients also, retired person above age of 60. And 3 days, he started developing breathlessness, where he ignored, as we physicians ignore our own symptoms. So I had an emotional phone call from my professor's daughter. So 3 days, he developed a lot of symptoms of severe breathlessness. And what happened? He consulted himself. He treated himself in a private hospital where things went out of hand. The oxygen level went very down. Then, since he's a retired professor of the Government General Hospital, so he'll be taken care of. Again, I had a phone call from my professor's daughter that things are not so good. His father's deteriorating. My professor deteriorating. So I had to make a decision to visit my professor in Government General Hospital, which I'm also a product of Madras Medical College. So when I went and visited the COVID ward, I see extreme exhaustion among health workers. For the past 3.5 months, they've been drained. They've been drained in managing floods and floods of cases. The staff nurses, the health workers, the doctors. In fact, 40 to 46% of doctors or healthcare personnel were COVID positive. They were in home isolation, somewhere in the hospital isolation, including the dean of the institution also COVID positive. So when I saw a professor, I see a pathetic state where he was on a non-invasive ventilator, where you don't put a tube, you put a mask ventilation, connect to a ventilator, difficult to breathe. His X-rays was infiltrated. Then I thought we can't continue care anymore there. So I had to make a call. I had to make a risky decision of shifting him in an ambulance with a ventilator backup to my center. So I had to arrange an ambulance with PP suits, went to Government General Hospital. Then I had to switch over the mask ventilation from the installed ventilation in the hospital to the transport ventilator. Then shifted him to the hospital which I'm working. Then I placed him in our intensive care. Now he's under intensive care under the supervision of me. A difficult week ahead for him to exactly say the exact clinical picture is. So this is one simple narration happening to a medical fraternity person belonging to an institute, a physician himself. Imagine this is a plight of the situation, a simple view of the situation. Imagine how common people are also getting affected. So this corona has literally exhausted Tamil Nadu's public health system over the past 3.5 months. Usually we speak about Tamil Nadu's robust health system, our infrastructure, investment into public health. That has taken a toll now. So it's consuming like us. See, if you see the case peaking up to a level that every day we official data released by the government, every day we have around 2,000 cases per day. Then the hospitalization is also increasing. During initial period in the months of March, we used to receive cases in the form of mild fever, cough, who had history of travel to international places or history of contact with people who had international travel. Those history was there, and we used to treat them within the premises of the hospital with proper protection gears. They improve in 7 to 10 days and they go home. Over the past 1 month, we have started seeing a lot of sick cases coming to us, where patient comes with severe breathlessness. When we see their oxygen level, it is very, very low on the first point of examination. Then we do a imaging to find the CT scan or an X-ray. We find the lung involvement is more than 50 to 60% on the initial presentation. Then we poke into the history and we say, yes, they are symptoms of just 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. And those risk factors are patients who are diabetic, who have uncontrolled diabetes. You know, South India, especially Tamil Nadu or Chennai, is like a diabetic epicenter. We have 10% to 15% of diabetic patients, that too young diabetic patients. So we see a lot of comorbids operating here. So in Chennai, anyone who's mild obese, uncontrolled diabetes, with the level of community spread, they run a high risk factor for the progression of this particular illness. See, coronavirus comes as a normal respiratory tract virus with symptoms of 2 to 3 days of cough, cold. That's it. Out of which, who progresses to severity? So we have some assessment of risk factors. Suppose if you take 100 cases, 86% of the cases are mild cases or asymptomatic cases. Around 10% of the cases are the cases who come to the hospital for breathlessness complaint or severe complaints, out of which 5% needs intensive care management, and 1%, there's around 1% we have the mortality. So for example, an 8 crore population of Tamil Nadu, or I would say for Chennai, we say 1 crore population. Imagine 1%. 1% will be around 1 lakh. So if you have 1 lakh people are going to have a very serious fatal illness, are we equipped to tackle that 1 lakh cases issue? So it all started when, see, why Tamil Nadu or especially Madras is not able to flatten the curve, because at the same time the cases start flooding when compared to the other European nations, where they're able to flatten the curve. But why not? It's not happening here. It's a big question. So simple. See, for an epidemic or a pandemic, the initial steps should be placed in a correct way. The initial foundation stones should be kept in the correct way. Then only any strengthening of the health system subsequently will make your subsequent action to get desired results. If you're not placing the first initial stones in the exact way, then whatever strengthening mechanism which will happen later will not fall in place and it won't give you desired outcomes. See, since in the world of globalization and the net, the information is not contained. We all knew that case incidents start epicenter in Wuhan, and there was a pandemic situation was addressed by WHO as early as last week of January or first week of February. So the government, especially in India, both the center and the state, should have acknowledged that warning. Acknowledge the warning and take necessary precautions. What necessary precautions government should have taken is proper screening of the imported cases. So as you see the map of India, you see Chennai, one epicenter, Mumbai, one epicenter, Ahmedabad as an epicenter, Delhi, an epicenter, where you have maximum number of air traffic, right? So where the places where maximum number of air traffic are the places are now having the epicenter of cases, a reporting number of cases. So one common approach is was proper screening was taken in the month of mid of Feb or early March of the imported cases who came from various countries, from especially China or hard hit areas, Europe, during that point of time. What do you mean by proper screening? Proper screening is we should have tested this RT-PCR, nasopharyngeal swab or oropharyngeal swab, to all the travel patients or all the imported cases who landed up here in Chennai. Say around 2.5 to 3 lakh. Now the government is doing now in the month of May for all the imported cases from Dubai and various Middle East countries. Government has set up a good 3-system tier lab facility within the airport. So all the patients are collected, pharyngeal swabs, nasopharyngeal swab, until the results are available. They have been contained in a facility. If they are positive, they have been sent to the hospital. If they have symptoms, they were quarantined for 14 days before releasing into the community. But these steps were placed in the month of mid of Feb. Did the government was so sensitive in the month of Feb to month of March is a big question. So what I advise you, you go to our health minister, Dr. Vijay Bhaskar's tweets, especially in the month of March and early beginning of April. He would have given regular updates of number of travel passengers through air has been screened. So he will give one first column, number of passengers screened, but the number of tests will be very, very minimal. Suppose if he says number of passengers screened around 1 lakh to 2 lakh, what is the number of tests during that point of time will be around 400 to 500. If you take the tweet of March 24, and if you see the tweet of Kerala Health Ministry around March 24, Kerala would have done a test around 6,700 cases of RT-PCR, but Tamil Nadu would have done only 550 cases during the point of time. So the screening, what the government said, it's thermal screening. So many of the passengers, in order to avoid this quarantine, add paracetamol tablets before taking up the flight. Then they turned up here, afebrile, then they percolated into the community. My first case was a typical history of travel where a daughter has come to Chennai to see her parents and to attend a private function. A geriatric old patients were tested positive. There was the first initial cases to my hospital. The patient didn't disclose the history. Then we probe into. Then they declared, yes, their daughter has visited them. What history from the Western world, especially America. They came for a local marriage function, and they had started having symptoms. And we had few nurses who have been exposed for a geriatric care, not for COVID care, for geriatric care, for regular sugar checkups. Even those exposed sisters tend to be positive. So just spreadability of this virus. So the spreadability is like 2.5 to 3, the R naught is. And that too in a densely populated place like Chennai or in Indian capital. The infection rate, the spreadability rate is surmountable was SARS coronavirus 2. So, for example, this imported cases, then their imported cases to their relatives or the first contacts come into the local transmission. Then after the local transmission, then percolating into the community, it is community transmission. Then community transmission going uncontrolled, it is stage 4. So right now, still governments are in a denial mode regarding community transmission. Now we have started seeing cases without history of travel, without history of contact with persons who made that travel. All spontaneous cases. We have cases that they have been in lockdown, 100% maintain all physical distancing and all health precautions, but turning out to be COVID positive. So that is the impact of community spread here. So this community transmission is very well documented in research papers of ICMR, but in public, in press meet, ICMR is declining that. So one of the earliest study ICMR gave us around the month of March, late March and April second week. It is able to take up cases of the SARS, the severe respiratory cases admitted in hospitals of Maharashtra, Gujarat and Chennai. They found out that 40% of cases didn't have history of travel, nor didn't have history of any contact for any travel people, like the relatives who have been in contact or exposed to the people who have done the travel. So it is very well documented that community transmission was very much existent. Again, regarding this epidemic, one more issue is transparency. So we have to open about it. The problem with the governments is not being transparent. So denial of community transmission is still prevalent. Then blame game also has been initiated, blaming the people for the community transmission. Then proper screening protocols implementation, which took a lot of time. So the government of Tamil Nadu very, very clearly missed the early steps. That's the first part. Second part is, yes, community transmission has taken place. Okay. So the easiest approach for any government, especially in a densely populated country, is lockdown. Why I say it's an easiest approach is people fail to misunderstand the concept of lockdown. The lockdown is for us to get ready for the epidemic. Is ready to make ready for the epidemic in the means of getting ready for your health services, for medical care services, for making people understand about this corona and its spreadability, about physical distancing, about constant wearing of a mask during going to crowded places, proper hand washing maneuvers, and to take predominant vital information and to adapt to that particular information in order to prevent the chain of transmission. And for us, for doctors, to make our hospital facilities be ready to receive the bout of cases. And one more impact of lockdown, one more advantage of lockdown is, for example, the benefit of lockdown is, if for example, X number of cases shouldn't load up in just 2 days or 3 days time. So the same number of cases should come over the period of 2 or 3 weeks. So lockdown will help us to reduce the peak of cases coming to the hospital, sick cases coming to the hospital at one point of time, in order to spread the same number of cases over a period of time. So lockdown is for us, is for the medical community, to make us ready to receive respiratory tract infection cases who need oxygen support and intensive care treatment. So, but the government thought otherwise. They thought lockdown will flatten the curve. Lockdown will cut down the chain of transmission. What will cut down the chain of transmission is the classical method of testing the cases, isolating the cases, tracing the contacts, then quarantine the contacts. That's the only tested, effective method done all over in order to prevent this. See, India and Tamil Nadu had a lot of time. We had the do's list and the don'ts list. The don'ts, what are the negative impact created by the countries which didn't do proper screening. The do's, even small countries like Bangladesh, or I would say Southeast Asian countries, or South Korea type of countries, they had a do list, which can be implemented in states which had some good basic infrastructure. So now Tamil Nadu says that we are doing the maximum number of testing, and they say that the recovery rates are good. But mind it, the two things: testing, not the number being counted now, doing testing at appropriate times. See, 3 weeks back, a medical committee appointed by the Tamil Nadu government said that around 18,000 tests per day is essential. I'm talking about 3 to 4 weeks back. At the time, the testing average was between 10,000 to 11,000. Now the government has geared up to the level of 25 to 30,000 per test. Now the requirement will be more. The government thinks that when we test more, that's why the cases are more. No, it's a reverse. It's because if the caseload is more, the testing positivity is increasing. So we should understand that we are in a height of a red spot area where we have average of 2,500 to 3,000 cases of diagnosis per day, and our health systems are getting drained up because of severe respiratory tract cases, filling up the hospitals, especially our oxygen line beds, as well as our severe acute respiratory tract wards, infective wards, as well as our intensive cares. And our health personnel should be reinforced in order to take up the challenge. Now, for the past 4 weeks. As a personal physician, on an average, I'm getting used in a call of around 65 to 70 calls per day for requirement of beds, or patients complaining of breathlessness, want to get admitted. These are my own clientele of patients whom I have done my practice right from 2004 to 2020 till now, are my own patients who are getting affected because of the rampant community spread. So the government should really ramp up and completely start over right from scratch one. So first they have to accept, yes, community spread has happened. Government still goes behind something approach called the cluster approach. So initially they started with the Delhi cluster, then they talked about the Coimbatore cluster. Now they opened a lockdown within a lockdown, no, during the last days of May. And there's something called the TASMA cluster. Now we have something called the Secretariat cluster. Now the government general hospital per se is a cluster now. So if you're going to mark them as clusters, now entire Chennai has become a cluster for Tamil Nadu. So now what are all the districts are saying? Any travel history from Chennai, red alert. Don't allow any people from Chennai coming back to the districts. Test them, then make them allow into it. So that's what I'm saying, that Chennai could have been protected when you see our airport as a cluster, when you have screened your airports very well. When you screen means when screening by RT-PCR very well, things would have been different. Fine, that first step has been lost. Now community transmission, don't underestimate, don't underplay. Now we see a lot of disparity between the death rates. Chennai Corporation number of death rates has not been reported into the health bulletin. Rather than then there's a disparity among the caseload, severe bloods. So I think government should come again and revisit. The government has formed 12 committees so far. I think many cooks spoil the food. I think there should be a good line of vision or a commanding force to guide the people in order to get their belief system into place. See, for people always rely on the government. They need some transparency. They need some hope, some reliability. Now we have the chief minister stating that the corona will be disappeared. Corona will be eradicated in 3 days time and 15 days time. Now, without being rational, he's blaming that only the gods will know. So those type of statements can't evoke any sense of reliability on the government efforts. It will try to downplay the government efforts. So people, they're into the blame game of the people. They say Coimbatore clusters because of the traders there, vendors there. The people are not cooperating with us. The spillovers are there. I do accept this is a democratic country. We have to take people as an inclusive part of this corona eradication program. Some type of intersectoral coordination is missing. Some type of visionary leadership is missing, especially in these difficult times. So that point is very essential, because you have failed to inspire the public sector servants, the public sector doctors, the health personnel in order to fight in this COVID war. That is happening. So some amount of revamping is necessary right from the scratch down to the top in order to contain this virus. So my message here is very clear. We are in a hotspot. We are in a pandemic. I think a multi-sectoral approach, a multi-pronged approach from the government side, by also involving the many players, including the private side, should summit each other, along with the people taking into action regarding creating much more awareness about this virus, about the chain of transmission of this virus, about how early you have to find the symptoms of breathlessness, and now what are the ways to come to the hospital for initial checkup, when to test the checkup, then how to go about it. So that line has to be very clear. And the importance of isolation, if you have a contact with the case, the importance of quarantine in order to break the chain of transmission and obey the government regulations. This has to be done in a very meticulous way. So even a strong health infrastructure state of Tamil Nadu, it's because of the lack of proper leadership or the proper captain of the ship we find the strong ship is struggling hard into the sea of corona. So things have to be really rectified in a very drastic manner. Kaushik?
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Ian. So we can actually have a question and answer session now. So people who have questions can actually send your questions in the chat box, which I can actually then go on and ask the question to the doctor. Okay. So there is a question from Amil Varghese. So he says, sir, do you think the situation in Chennai became worse due to the absence of good leadership? How do you see the city of Chennai had the pandemic had occurred while Karunanidhi Jayalalitha was the chief minister?
So it's a straightforward question. See, the bureaucrats, it can't be run the government. Only the people leader can run the government in a democracy. That is very clear. So when you have bureaucrats coming to play, you'll have a lot of ego clash between the bureaucrats. That has happened in COVID management. The change of guard, the placement of committees, and each committee respecting not other committee, and the disparity of information delivery, the action taken has always been there. So when you have a leadership which will draw some fear among the bureaucrats, right from the top, where you can't really play around, or you can't mess up with your ego clashes. You will overcome with your ego clashes, especially in times of an epidemic. Things could have been different. So that's why I see, especially in a democratic country, I'm talking about true strong leaders. I'm talking about true strong leaders. I'm putting again, especially we see Pinarayi sir from Kerala or Naveen Patnaik from Orissa, who have done their jobs regarding this containment measures. Apart from the caseload, we understand this is a global pandemic. We understand many developed nations are suffering and all the stuff. But they have done their job within the 3 or 4 months. They were able to contain the cases. They were able to stagger down the lockdown. Now we are peaking up, still yet to peak. That explains that there's a lot of inefficiency or lack of coordination, because there's no an orchestra man who does the music. We see a lot of noises. They're individual players. They're really good. You have names in the bureaucratic list who are very good names around. But who plays the orchestra? Who listens to the orchestra issue? Definitely, I think there will be difference. I have witnessed Kalaignar during chikungunya epidemic. See, when chikungunya epidemic struck very hard in the early period of 2007 and 2008, the first year there were around 67,000 cases of chikungunya in Tamil Nadu. So then people really started in action. Kalaignar formed a committee from the planning commission, so that the finance department, health department, and the education department were put into place. Just 4 members in that committee, not so much, not 22 committees. Just 4-member single committee from the chikungunya task force, and they give strong instructions for the cooperations regarding containment measures of the mosquito spraying and identification of cases and doing home care services. And the next year, the epidemic really disappeared. The subsequent years, and updating. See, in spite Jayalalitha or Kalaignar, they always have some people or some resources to do out of the box thinking. People who the 11th man concept. Suppose, for example, in a committee, if there are 10 members, they had one 11th man used to oppose the opinion of all the 10 members. And they used to acknowledge the position of the 11th man, and they see that the 11th man is respected. Even though his views are very radical and negative or opposite to the collective decision. So that approach worked very well. And the fear factor among them, the fear factor of their leadership also played a major role. And people per se, see, even though lots of ifs and buts regarding them, they were like people leader, right? They were usually used to command the voice of at least 1 crore people, just like that. So the people believed in what they said. So that fall in place. So definitely there's a difference. I admit that.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello, sir. There was a question from Surya. Still in village side, no one is ready to follow the instructions. Still, they are roaming around places. How to handle them? So this kind of question.
Yeah, see, there's a typical mindset among us, right? Regarding not only Corona, pre-Corona, prevention is better than cure is a concept to be instilled in health. But our people, the prevention element is very, 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 very minimal. They come to a facility if their own measures are overwhelmed and their inability only they push them to the hospital. Even if you take why in Corona late presentation are increasing the mortalities, for 1 to 2 days, small fever, they try to manage. They go to the local medical shop, take some medicines, they try to try for local remedies. By the time they visit to the hospital, the lung damage is severe. And Corona, we have something called happy hypoxia. People don't know that their oxygen level is going down. Corona is a virus which will uncouple the oxidation process in the body system. So when the oxygen level comes down, you will have a breathlessness. Even that symptoms patients are not able to ascertain. Only after 30 to 40% lung damage they come to us. Coming to the question, we have an attitude. Oh, Corona, wow, it's in China only. It is not entered to the Indian borders. Then second, oh, it has come to the Indian borders. Okay, let's be relaxed. Third, oh, it's come to Tamil Nadu. Oh, first case been reported. Okay, forget it. We'll wait. No issues. Oh, it's come only to Tamil Nadu. It's come to the next street. Okay, we'll be relaxed. No problem. It's come to only the next street. Oh, I'm in apartment. It has come to the third floor. Oh, no issues. It is not come to my floor. Oh, I'm affected by Corona. Then I panic. See the process. The government itself has this leisure attitude, right? Imagine the assembly warning given by the government when opposition took up the issue. They literally said it is a Corona's age, elderly people, it will affect elderly people. No need to wear mask. It's only the elderly people have to be really apprehensive of. Those type of comments were very well documented officially in assembly speeches, right? Then after a period of time, when the situation got worse, now it says only it's God-given thing. You have to deal with it. God's only to give direction. So that is the normal attitude of our public that is reflected even the people of positions of power. So that's why the initial containment measures were loose and virus were allowed to percolate inside and there is a rampant community spread. So that leisureness is very much among the rural people. The rural people are yet to witness the direct impact. See, even if you take in the month of Feb, in the month of March, or even the month of April, in Chennai also people didn't realize that there's a mad rush for them in order to get beds in hospitals. There's a mad rush of getting treated in hospital, getting positions inside the hospitals, including the government as well as the private. They didn't expect this type of situation just 1 month back or 1.5 months back, right? So imagine what will be the impact of the rural people. At least if the virus is in an urban center like Chennai, it's supposed to be the medical capital of the entire South India, where transplantation program was at its peak, and hospitals of refined status was there. Now 3 or 4 government hospitals within Chennai, 3 or 4 private hospitals in Chennai with good critical care beds, with health personnel. Imagine if the same impact percolates or invades other districts. It is invading, no. It is invading the contiguous districts, Kanchipuram, Tiruvallur, because we see apart from when the air traffic migration stopped, when the train traffic migration stopped, when the public transport migration stopped, it's a migration by walk. As humans, each and human asymptomatic carriers carry the virus in the throat without any symptoms. They walk and they spread. So that's why from Chennai, the contiguous districts of Kanchipuram, Tiruvallur are affected now. The cases are peaking. Imagine a case from Chennai tried to bypass the government regulation, visits for a death ceremony, visits for a marriage ceremony in his rural town, and he's an asymptomatic carrier. If he distributes to a tea shop in a rural area, imagine a tea shop is a very common point in a rural area. Maximum 10 to 15 people will be there. Suppose if an asymptomatic tea vendor asks Corona, you would spread the entire village headman, no? So if the villages get into it, and if the village, this is the same virus, no? Whatever it is the same virus, same pattern. So slowly, if there is a slow peaking, apart from the initial segment of fever and mild symptoms, imagine if the village, rural Tamil Nadu gets affected, who needs breathlessness, who need oxygen support, who need critical care, where do they go? What are the health systems in place there in rural areas, apart from Chennai district? And you should imagine Chennai It's not a separate Mars or Saturn planet. Chennai is very much the epicenter of Tamil Nadu. It is an ICU of Tamil Nadu. It is the economic platform for Tamil Nadu. All districts have connections with Chennai, right? So when Chennai is at its red center, and imagine if there is a migration of cases slowly to other districts, and imagine the rural districts with not amount of sufficient health infrastructure, they are going to be affected very badly.
Doctor,
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Kaushik.
Yeah, Doctor, this is Ramesh.
Ramesh.
Yeah, I have actually 3 questions. The first question is, many models were predicting that there is almost 20 crore people in India will get affected. And they're saying in the Chennai also, it close to 2 lakh cases in the mid of July something, they're saying. And how reliable this model is? How much, how much the population will going to get affected? Because the 20 crore, if you say the severe cases are, the morbidity cases, if it is there at least for actually 2%, the death is really very huge. And how this actually the models and with actually the real data?
Okay.
The first question. The second question is that about the existing the facility in this country. Almost 72 to 75% of the population in India right now are dependent on actually private medicine. The private hospitals, according to the government data. Now the government says that to actually cure this corona cases in the government, private hospitals, they say it's actually many lakhs is going on now. According to the government, that I said, how this with this, the more privatization in the health system, how can we handle the present situation? The third question regarding the medicine. I read yesterday there was some medicine which came as a tablet. So in India, they're going to, in September, we are going to get this. Let's come to the real. Is there any medicine? How the future will be? Regarding actually getting the medicines, or the people are working in it. So can you answer this with these 3 questions?
Okay. The first one is the model pattern. See, all these predictive model patterns are only suggestive models. Actually, this is a novel coronavirus. The pattern and the strain pattern is completely unique. See, when you see the SARS virus, they thought it would affect like a pandemic, like a Spanish epidemic in 2003, but it didn't. It was able to contain. The virus per se lost its virulence after 2 or 3 bouts of infection and was able to contain. I was an house surgeon in 2003 in Cholera Hospital, which is an infectious disease hospital. The government purchased ventilators at that point of time in Cholera Hospital, but no one knows how to operate a ventilator there in a Cholera Hospital. But naturally, the utilization was not there. Okay, the second is MERS-CoV virus, the Middle East virus, the same corona group only. Even it didn't spread much. But regarding COVID-2 or the SARS coronavirus, the spreadability is huge. The human affinity for this virus is huge, and the spreadability is huge. Now the host response is completely varied depending upon the various populations of the country. So there are some ethnic and genetic and racial reasons for all that also. I had my apprehension as very early as March or Feb that I was worried about the diabetic tendency of the host capital here. So we have huge chunk of diabetic patients, young diabetic patients who will be vulnerable because there's a lot of Southeast Asia, especially South India, Tamil Nadu, the comorbid, the heart disease, as well as diabetes, it's at its peak. So here we have a huge chunk of vulnerable population getting affected, and that is happening now. So the model prediction, especially the PMO office, was carried away by a model by the Boston Working Group. Boston Working Group is a group where they are responsible for hospital infrastructure, privatization of medicine, all the stuff. But they are not experts in infectious disease containment model. And AIIMS SPM department also gave up a model regarding the flattening of the cases by lockdowns. So they gave a model of 15-day lockdown. They gave a model of 2-month lockdown. They gave a model of 3-month lockdown. Nothing worked. Nothing worked. all models failed, especially the lockdown models, because they failed to understand all models are developed not to flatten the curve, that is to give us time for us, for the health structure to gear up. So the unpredictability of this virus is very much there. That's why the modeling of the virus is not there. Suppose if you have a pattern of virus, for example, you say dengue. Dengue, we know what are the hotspot areas of dengue and what are the containment measures can be intervened so the case load can be contained. We know the pattern, how it spread, especially through mosquitoes. So what are the source reduction for the mosquitoes, the larva? So the containment measures can be introduced so that we can have the extrapolation also. For example, if you take measles, if you have 1 case of measles, there will be around 13 to 15 subclinical cases. There are fixed models for projecting measles, even for polio, to plan for vaccination programs and etc. But corona is a novel virus. The unique pattern is spreadability.
Hello?
For
Hello?
example, in a congested country like us, 5 people per day, for example, in a health worker or a social worker or a healthcare personnel or a vendor contains the virus, he has a containment measure, he has a measure to spread around 325 people on an average. So no model will predict on down under. See, it is not top under. We should work out down under. All models should be done, taken into people into consideration. Taking about the value stream of our particular country. We can't just implement a Western model or a typical Western type of model and fill it up here in India. India dynamics are completely different. Each and every state has its own dynamics. Each and every district has its own dynamics of functioning, of working, of people interaction. So we have to understand the value stream of the Indian system before preparing the model. But unfortunately, those models fail to take into account the nature of the people here. They fail to account the anthropological views of the people here, the pattern of people here, the behavior, their grouping behavior, the collective behavior, the function behavior, as well as the socio-economic conditions that their people are put to. So that's why the models were a failure. That was your first question. Second question. See, today in Chennai Corporation, they did a camp, health camp. For the last 2 days, they're doing some health camp. And they've released some data. Okay, let us assume the data is transparent. Okay, for example, they have screened around 10,000 people, and they found out that people which have respiratory tract symptoms similar to corona among 1,400. So for 10,000 people, if you are going to have 1,400 people who have the typical symptoms, suppose if they had suspicions of corona or they have corona, imagine the percentage is around 15%, 14%. If you're going to implement that in a 1 crore population, it's going to be huge. And out of that 1.4 crore people, 1% are going to expire. It's going to be huge, because the numbers 1% seems to be small. But as you rightly said, if you're going to implement or work out the actual numbers for the percentage, our loss is going to be huge. Our consumptions are going to be huge. Regarding how ready we are, see, you said that in a country like us, especially the central government, they spend only 1% of their GDP in health. 1% of GDP to health. And that too, if you go to split into private spending and public spending, 7.7 only on public health infrastructure spending. And research, health research, again dismissible. For entire India, so far post-independence, for 70 years, we have just one virology institute. Shocking. We should have zone, at least 4 virology institutes, South Zone, North Zone, East Zone, West Zone. We have only one. So every pattern detected from various places have to send their serotypes, typing and research modules to one virology institute. So that's the importance of successive governments made place on importance of public health. So if you say 70% private spending for rural India or urban India, the spending to a small nursing home or the small private clinics is more rather than the big hospitals. If they have maximum ailments, people go to big hospitals. So only the private players includes the small private clinic holders and the small nursing homes. They are not in corona management. All the private clinics have been closed because they don't have proper physical distancing. No small nursing homes have the capacity to handle corona epidemic. Even that element is also gone. So the government is limited. It's limited. It's limited to handle corona in big setups, whether it's a government hospital or a private setup. A private setup means similar to a corporate setup, because with the PPE suits, with the staffing pattern, with the health personnel, with the lab testing, with the oxygen line supply, it needs strong health infrastructure where we are lacking. So how long you can hide a toned slipper with polish? Corona has completely removed that, and the toned slipper is evident here. The toned slipper, the country which has failed to invest in public health, the country which has failed to inculcate public health education, is facing the brunt. Even at this height of this epidemic, in the form of reforms, the government want to privatize. They're talking about public-private partnership. No. Even in corona times, and we very know 80 to 90% of the healthcare facilities are done by only in public health infrastructure. Even private newspapers have started writing that public health should be important, should given surmountable weightage, the GDP contribution more. The government is deaf, completely deaf. So even in type of crisis situation, this is the attitude of the government. Imagine the non-crisis situation. So private setup can only bridge some gaps. Private sector can only bridge some gaps. That's it. They are not a replacement. A strong public health institutions are the only saviors for people like us. Even see developed nations. For example, European nations, especially NHS. See France. Even though they are into not a leftist ideal, they have adapted that. They have learned the mechanisms from the leftist countries, and they put a word called socialistic approach. So a capitalist country, if they are into public health, where does the concept of public health came from them? The idea is from the left world, and they implemented successfully, and they've seen that they have been regulated successfully. But here we don't know. Here that way or that way, nothing. End of the day, people are confused. So the entire Indian democratic system has been tuned to serve around 3 to 4% of the classes. That's it. 3 to 4% of the top layers. That's it. The entire system. So when a corona epidemic comes in, the 3 to 4% have access. What about the rest? What is going to be the rest? Especially rural India, semi-urban India, with no access to an oxygen bed in a facility. It is going to be a blunder in some coming days to come or coming months to come. But the case peaking is going to reach a peak, and when the cases start percolating from the urban area to the rural area. We see how the workers were being victimized in this country, where without any dignity, they have to walk, they have to die on the process. Malnutrition, non-COVID care, vaccination approach, everything collapsed. Their single day meal is collapsed. So an upper middle class is down into a lower middle class. The lower middle class down to poor. Poor are completely shattered. We don't know what types of starvation deaths we are going to undergo because of this. So the government is insensitive. The central government is insensitive to all this stuff. What is the mind behind the insensitiveness? That's the first question I'm asking. If you're going to assess why the insensitiveness, because elite always serves elite. Simple. The mentality always serves elite. Still, they're hesitant to do direct cash benefit transfers, direct delivery of goods. But state governments are doing the jobs, right? Even though if we have all ifs and buts, they're directly answerable to that. So Corona clearly exhibited that only a federal structure with more of socialistic aspect will protect the people and nothing else. That is very much proven. Third thing you asked about the drugs. See, after globalization, there's always a pharmaceutical pushover among, even in crisis situation. So as ethics practicing physician, we always take up reputed journals to give us some treatment protocols, and we try to fit into our experience. Right now, whatever the drugs, the pharmaceuticals, or the media is projecting, all based on very, 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 very small trials. So in order to understand the gravity of the problem, the small trials, it's not enough in order to suggest a definite line of treatment for corona. So I would suggest that simple approaches of supportive care about proper detection of cases and proper oxygen delivery and proper ethic-based practice based on various research trials will be helpful. For example, we see the dexamethasone. Dexamethasone is a steroid. It came up in the recovery trial. But in India, we have a practice to give dexamethasone in selected cases who are affecting with severe lung injury. That is very much in our practice that we are doing it, but we don't document it. That's a problem. So that is very much well in the protocol, very cost-effective protocol. The antivirals which have been actively prescribed by the various reports of pharmaceuticals, I think I'll hold a wait. I'll wait for much more stronger studies to really give a true benefit so that we can prescribe. For example, if you take H1N1, the swine flu epidemic came in. Yes, an antiviral drug, Oseltamivir, was a definite line of treatment. We had cases recovering very well, or the intensity of the infection coming very well. So if we have that, because of large double-blinded randomized control trials where they're available, and we saw the results of the comparison between two groups. So those type of studies are yet to come for corona. I think in near future, I think we may hit a target where some particular antiviral drug will try to reduce the viral application or intensity of the infection.
Okay. There was 2 questions from audience. One is from Dr. Anbalagan. What is your opinion about the Indian medicine cure to corona? Second is from Jafino. When can we expect vaccines in the market?
So regarding the Indian medicine, again, we have to have a very clear approach. See, we have to have a special research model to understand Indian medicine, because they are it's very pathetic to club every Indian medicine under one group called Ayush. So Ayurveda has a different principle, Siddha has a different principle, Unani has a different principle. The problem is, whatever the research methodologies which I have said for the so-called the medicine, the allopathic medicines, what we say, it is also based on evidence-based. I think we need more evidence-based avenues developed for our medicines so that the extract can be done and proper trials should be placed with RCT trials should be placed. Those type of research avenues have to be developed. See, in terms of corona epidemics, I think in a type of life-threatening situation, those type of trials are quite difficult, I understand. But definitely, we need larger trials, larger research should be delivered to find what's the principal extract, and we need scientific data backing up those before prescribing to the patient. That's one. And number 2, false claims should be avoided. So I see there is a lot of false claim that is even before advent of corona, or they were new to that. People have known what is a virus per se, what mechanism of action it acts. Just like an immunomodulator, yes, it has a role, they're saying. But when you go to say some substantial definite line of treatment, we need some evidence-based protocols to be developed very strongly. That unfortunately lacking not only for even traditional medicines, as well as for any type of research activity here also. So unless an effective research module develops, we can't strongly prescribe. I think there is something happening in our National Siddha Institute, and few cases they have been reporting. Still, I think the larger studies have to be extrapolated rather than giving a patient a false claim that there's a all-round cure for a particular infection, and people taking into false confidence without following the physical distancing and proper protection measures. Those type of false confidence shouldn't be instilled among the people. I understand we need to have a long summation or an integration approach in order to deal with our traditional health systems. Second, vaccine. See, vaccine again. See, vaccine is not a simple job. See, if you take a vaccine trajectory, it takes at least 7 to 8 years for a vaccine to develop. See, if you take SARS coronavirus 1, especially the SARS, there's vaccine available. 15 years have been passed. Not yet. MERS-ONCO, is vaccine available? No, not yet. Why? because lots of research has not happened. When the epidemic subsided, people never bothered into invest into research. They didn't expect one more corona will turn up. If they would have developed a good vaccine, at least that baseline research activity could be implemented here and shorten the duration of functioning of vaccine. Now they are hurrying up. The modules which were said that 3 months or 4 months, 3 years for its trajectory have been cramped into 3, 4 months. I'm really apprehensive whether we'll get an effective vaccine regarding SARS-CoV because of the spike proteins. And we have strain variations also coming up. So there is a different strain variation. When you have a strain variation virus, when you develop a vaccine, again a strain differs. What is the impact? So at least 12 to 15 months, I don't see a minimum 12 to 15 months, I don't see a vaccine in sight. Even now, if the vaccine turns up also, I would assess how far it is effective. See, for H1N1, the anti-flu vaccine, it is not a complete protector, but definitely it will reduce the severity of the infection. So that is one biggest advantage. Even if you vaccinated the individual will get a virus flu, but the severity without vaccination will differ. So they'll have a milder infection. Even that type of virus also good, because they're seeing the severity of the cases and loads of cases turning up into our emergencies and casualties will be really more relieved if at all, if a vaccine develops in 12 to 15 months time, which at least reduces the severity of illness. I think another 1 year, I think it's going to be tough for us.
Sir, actually, there are two questions from Professor Tarun. So he asks, what explains the high numbers for Chennai? There are other mega cities also which don't show these numbers. And second, how prepared is Tamil Nadu in the coming days or weeks? We have seen videos of patients being cloistered in very small spaces in cities like Mumbai. Is there a chance of such thing happening here?
There are two things. See, regarding the metropolitans, Chennai, Bombay, Ahmedabad, Delhi. If you're able to witness the air traffic data for all this, the maximum number of cases from corona epidemic areas, city areas, and the imported cases were there. So that's what my initial talk is. If you're going to map the corona affected countries visiting or coming back to their home, especially in these cities, the step-ins into these cities will be more when compared to Calcutta or any other metropolitan cities. So the fallings of the very cases where you see, for example, Chennai, we have a lot of medical college students who visited China for their medicine to complete the medical curriculum, 5.5 years course, especially even from Wuhan. So we have many teaching academic institutions from there also. So each and every Mumbai, yes, it is like a commercial capital for India. Delhi is the capital of India. Ahmedabad, you know the Trump effects, the Trump and the Modi visit, right? You know that impact. How that particular situation enter the ground of situation. If suppose if there are 2 or 3 cases in that crowd, I think the spreadability will be surmountably high. So the government was preparing for the Trump effect. So if you take Bangalore containment measures were very strong in place initially. They effectively controlled that containment measures. If you take Trivandrum Airport, where a lot of migrated population coming back to Kerala, they have some robust, strong systems in place. So that's why initially Chennai, especially Chennai administration or Tamil administration, they didn't expect this virus will turn into such a huge headache for them or huge impact on them. They didn't anticipate that. They didn't anticipate the fear. Kerala had that Nipah virus lessons to learn. So they're very much apprehensive and clear cut. They know the impact, how it's going to consume the health system. But Chennai was completely, was let loose. Till March end, they were quite careless. Because if you take the statements of the various policymakers, the health minister, as well as the chief ministers. Okay, what are the steps will be taken from the Tamil Nadu government? Yes, right now, some aggressive steps are necessary. Apart from the lockdowns, I think we should have strong testing potentials, which they have geared up, and isolating the cases and treating the cases, and contact tracing, and quarantine the contacts. I think the lockdown has given sufficient enough time to do that, but unfortunately, since for the past 3 to 4 weeks, since the severity of the illness has been aggressive, for past 2, 3 days, I think we have loads of cases requiring oxygen support and ventilator support is essential. I think we have to, now the target of Chennai is to flatten the mortality, not to flatten the cases. Look. Flatten the mortality means to flatten the severity of the cases, to flatten the death rate in corona. So that should be the approach now. And from the districts to the districts, I think Chennai should be completely walled off. I think if Chennai has some spillovers down to the district down under, at least Chennai is able to contain this load with this already existing health infrastructure, both public and private. I think the same can't be expected in other districts. It will be worse. So it's a challenging task. So imagine two densely populated countries. One is China and India, right? Two densely populated countries. When the second wave started in Beijing, China did 7 lakh tests in one day. 7 lakh tests in one day. Now we have taken 3 months to do 7 lakh tests. So that is the what boon when you're going to invest in health, when you go to health and education. So that's a return. Okay, even though it's a communist country, their lockdown will be effective. The spillovers will be very less. Then the containment measures will be effective, and people have to follow. Here, the essence of democracy is only for 3 to 4% of the people, right? Actual democratic principle will be for 3 to 4% of the upper cream. Imagine 90% have never understood the importance or essence of democracy or the rights of them or the dignity of them. So you're going to load up with a virus which never sees this. It's going to be the same virus which is going to infect the human health body. It sees each human health body as a host without any difference. But the host is completely varied in India. We had a host who had an elite host who have access to everything, and we have 90 to 90% of the host who have no access to anything. So imagine, this is the same virus. So imagine the knowledge, the orientation, the information, the awareness will be completely different. And end of the suffering is going to be uniform. The suffering is going to be uniform. The suffering in the form of getting that infection. But access to health will be limited to upper 3-4%, not to the down under. That is why I'm very fearful when the Chennai cases are going to cross to the districts, rural districts down under.
There's another question from Professor Suresh Govindarajan. Why is it so hard to get information on district-wise testing data?
Two things, sir. So first I talked about the transparency. Transparency is vital. When you place Shailaja, teacher of Kerala, and our health minister of Tamil Nadu, I think you can vote for transparency. As simple as that. This government, especially in dengue epidemics, I was at the height of the dengue epidemic. I was treating in one of the community hospitals about dengue epidemic in 2016. They don't play the dengue number of cases. They don't play the mortality. They said mark it as viral fever with thrombocytopenia rather than dengue for documented dengue cases. For an health intervention, the caseload is important. The number of caseload, all health policies, all financial allotment, all planning depends upon the caseload. If you're not going to be transparent about the caseload, everything becomes falsified. So the actual district-wise data becomes difficult for the government because they don't have the actual load of the cases. Even I find a few districts have no access to do facility to lab testing also. They have to cross out to the next district to do so. So I think because of lack of transparency, we are not able to get the district-wise data. I think after immense pressure from the opposition parties, I think government gave initially, but they stopped after that.
Okay. There is another question from Aravind Bharat. So in social media, some doctors are prescribing to buy pulse oximeter to check our oxygen levels. Your thoughts on that?
See, so this is quite vital because we have 86% of asymptomatic cases. Okay. The asymptomatic cases are like this predict the infection. And if they have a vulnerable age group patient in their home, for example, who's a vulnerable age group patient? I see patients having diabetic at the age of 35 or 40 with 10 years of diabetic is also a vulnerable patient. So mother or father or even elder brother or even yourself. So what is happening if this virus is percolating into the system? The virus is asymptomatic, but slowly it invades and produces a mild fever for 1 to 2 days and disappears. And this virus is clever enough to not to reflect the impact of the virus when it's going damage in his lung. So that is why we call it as hypoxia. The patient usually used to get breathlessness if their oxygen saturation is going below 92%. Just like you climb a few stairs up, you'll have some breathlessness. When you run or jog, you have the breathlessness because your oxygen demand is more. But corona cleverly masks that symptoms. So the patient are not able to understand their oxygen level is going down without any symptoms. At one point of time, when 50 to 40% of lung is involved, then the symptoms comes in. Then they come to the hospital. When we measure the oxygen saturation, it's very low, or at 70%, 74%. And we do a CT chest, we find a lot of infiltrates. Then high oxygenation therapy and intensive care treatment follows. So in order to prevent that, in order to detect early, in order to patients to come to us very early, we allow the patients to measure this finger pulse oximeter, especially in an hotspot hyper-endemic zone of Chennai. For example, if you have 2,000 cases per day officially, and loads of cases are coming up, so we don't know whether this trivial cough is due to corona or not, and it's disappeared. We have, for the vulnerables, especially patients who are heart disease patients who are diabetic patients, it's safe to early detect this declining oxygen trend and come to a medical facility much more earlier. I think it is be used, especially if you have a vulnerable population in your community, and if your community is, if your street or your zone is a red hot zone, and it is worth, because it costs your life, no? End of the day.
Yeah, so I think there's one more question from Kiran Gopal, and I think mostly that's it. Okay, so this is a simple question he has asked. If you have some symptoms like cough or cold, at what point should we decide to get tested? We are not sure whether we came in contact with COVID-19 positive person. At what point?
So actually, since this is a community spread, the history of contact is immaterial. It will like every 10 people, 3rd people will be COVID positive if there is a community spread. Suppose you're going on to a shopping mall or getting some purchases for vegetables, or a newspaper window, you carry a newspaper, you'll never know. So my suggestion is, if you are a very vulnerable patient or a diabetic or heart disease patient or a cancer survivor or on cancer treatment, or you're taking steroids for a long time for some other medical conditions, if you feel your immune system is not good at all, or you're a chronic smoker, you had history of tuberculosis, any pre-existing medical illness you have, even if you have a trivial cough or a throat congestion, mild fever, extreme fatigue, not explained by anything, if it is persist for more than a day or two, kindly go to a medical facility, meet the doctor, measure your saturation, and the doctor will decide whether to do testing or not. Don't wait for 3-4 days or doing local treatment or taking home remedies or going to a medical shop. This is for the non-immune individuals. For example, immune individuals, if you find you're asymptomatic, 86% asymptomatic, the cough disappears, maybe you can have one more extra day, no issues. But if there's a sustained cough, cold for 3 days, if you feel mild amount of breathlessness for more than 3 days, kindly visit. So for non-immune individuals, vulnerable group, 1 day of symptom, go to a medical facility, go to a treatment facility. If you're immune individual, you have no other risk factors, wait for day 2. If it's continuous for more than 2 to 3 days, kindly go.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I have a question. The thing is, regarding that vulnerability, whether the asthma patients and sinus
You're broken. You're broken. I can't hear you.
will be vulnerable to the corona, more vulnerable to corona. That's my question.
See, any respiratory ailments, right from COPD or asthma, especially they are taking a lot of inhalers, or they would have prescribed a lot of steroid injections prior during severity. I think if you are an asthmatic of any lung complaint, your lung compliance is poor. So whenever your lung compliance is poor because of some pre-existing illness, your vulnerability will be more. So when you have trivial cough symptoms, you got to visit to a medical facility immediately, because Don't allow the virus to percolate down to cause more damage.
Okay. Regarding sinusitis, that is also a problem.
Yeah. Any
Oh.
chronic sinusitis is also issue.
Okay. Okay.
So what about diabetes, sir?
Yeah, that's
Like,
what
so
see. Diabetes is a sole risk determinant factor regarding Chennai patients or Tamil Nadu patients, especially uncontrolled diabetes. When the 3 months average blood sugar is more than 8.5 or 9%, they are a risk factor patients. So every patient which we see receiving oxygen therapy, definitely diabetes is one of the major risk factor, and by we see this as pre-existing illness. So if you are an uncontrolled diabetic patient, if you have trivial system, yes, you are vulnerable.
Okay. Sir, I think that's it for the questions today. So if you have any concluding remarks, please do.
Concluding, stay safe, proper physical distancing, then wear your mask, because mask, whether you're infected, you won't transmit to others. The areas where the public spitting behavior is destroyed thanks to Corona. Then we are more eco-friendly, environment-friendly thanks to Corona. Then we are not going into the forest deforestation impact, because we know these are all zoonotic infections which were circulating among few bats or pangolins. Whenever the human nature of greed enters into their ecosystem, it gives back. So Corona has given hard-hitting lessons by consuming a lot of our lives, whether it's pollution index being reduced, whether proper sanitary measures or public health importance, public health infrastructure spending, and about the economy of this country or the inclusive development of country. Everything Corona is teaching us very, very strong lessons, and hope we learn the lessons for the future.